Good afternoon, everyone. The January 21st, 2025 Special Council meeting is called to order at 4 o'clock. We will start by addressing a procedural matter. There are 3 council members attending electronically. Section 10.5 of the Council Procedure Bylaw limits the number of members attending electronically to 2 members per meeting. This rule can be temporarily suspended by motion of council. I therefore move that Section 10.5 of the Council Procedure Bylaw be suspended for the duration of the January 21st, 2025 Special Council meeting, so Councillors Hoare, Kennington, and Mafty can all attend this meeting electronically. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. All in favour? None opposed. That carries. Thank you. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Has Council received the late items? May I have a motion to amend the agenda by adding the late item titled Additional Correspondence Related to Bylaw Numbers 1366, 2024, 1367, 2024, and 1368, 2024 under Agenda Item 4.2.
So moved.
Councillor Anderson moves. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hoare seconds. All in favour? None opposed. That carries. And finally, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson moves. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mafty seconds. All in favour? None opposed. That carries. We will now conduct a public hearing on District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1366, 2024, District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1367, 2024, and District of Ucluelet Housing Agreement Bylaw number 1368, 2024. These bylaws are related to the property at 221 Monado Road. As provided for in the Local Government Act, Council is required to hold a public hearing before adopting a zoning bylaw, an official community plan bylaw, or amendments thereto, unless a public hearing is prohibited by the Local Government Act or waived by Council in accordance with that Act. At the conclusion of this hearing, it will be closed. Once the public hearing is closed, Council cannot accept further communications or presentations from the applicant or the public respecting the proposed bylaws, unless Council decides to hold an additional public hearing. And also please note there will be no decisions made during this hearing, and Council is under no obligation to enter into a debate on any issue. Council will consider the bylaws at a future upcoming Council meeting. The purpose of this hearing is to hear from the public before third reading of the bylaws. Council may consider amending the proposed bylaws based on input received at this public hearing. At a public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in the property affected by the proposed bylaws will be given an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions on matters contained in the bylaws. However, all who speak must restrict their comments to the subject bylaws, and it is my responsibility to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. You will have 5 minutes to address Council for the first time. Staff will advise you at the 4-minute mark and when your time is up. After everyone has spoken once, those wishing to speak again will have an opportunity. After hearing submissions from members of the public, Council may ask questions to clarify what has been said. However, this is not a Q&A session or a town hall meeting. To maintain an atmosphere that is respectful of all points of view, it is important for the audience to refrain from applauding or cheering for speakers. Today, members of the public can participate in person or electronically. All speakers must state their name and address. I will now ask the clerk to further detail how the public may participate in this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. All related materials, including the subject bylaws, are available for review on the back table and on the district's website. The public can participate in this hearing in person, by phone, by Zoom, or by emailing communityinput@ucluelet.ca. To speak in person, please raise your hand when the mayor calls for in-person speakers. The mayor will call on you when it is your turn. Please speak from the mic at the podium. To speak by Zoom, click the raised hand icon when the mayor calls for speakers via Zoom. When it is your turn, the clerk will call on you by your Zoom name, so please ensure it's your first and last name. To speak by phone, press *9 when the mayor calls for speakers calling in. When it's your turn, the clerk will call on you by the last 3 digits of the phone number. You can press *6 to unmute yourself. Any unpublished emails about the subject bylaws received at communityinput@ucluelet.ca before the end of the public hearing will be read into record. Please put the bylaw number in the subject line and keep your emails short. Published correspondence will not be read. For further details about how to participate by Zoom, telephone, or email, please visit ucluelet.ca/public hearings.
Thank you. I now declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1366, 2024, District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1367, 2024, and District of Ucluelet Housing Agreement Bylaw number 1368, 2024, open. The Director of Community Planning will now provide a brief overview of these bylaws. After the Director speaks, the applicant will have an opportunity to address Council, after which I will call 3 times for public input. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I will add just logistically one thing about the hearing is that we do have a copy of the agenda with all of the attachments that are online that some of you may have seen. It's at the back of the room, as well as copies of the current zoning bylaw and official community plan bylaws for reference if anyone feels the need to refer to them during the hearing. So I will provide a high-level overview of the bylaws. I'll do 3 things. Provide a high-level overview of the bylaws, then just walk through the content of what's in the bylaws, and then give a very brief overview of the proposed development, really to highlight the development areas and the different uses. I'm not going to be going into details of the buildings or the various studies and reports. Again, they're attached in the agenda and publicly available, and that would take us all night. And then the developer, they may wish to describe their proposal in greater detail, but staff will focus on providing context really to the bylaws that are the subject of the public hearing. So in really highest level, the application, before I get into the bylaws, is a proposed subdivision and mixed development of market housing, attainable and affordable housing, commercial tourist accommodation, and service commercial uses with a total of 251 principal units in the development on the property at 221 Monado Road. And as Mayor McEwen, as he noted, there are 3 bylaws that are really the subject of this hearing. The first, in general terms, the purpose of Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1366, 2024, is to amend the District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Bylaw number 1306, 2022, which is referred to as the OCP, to change the long-range land use plan Schedule A of the OCP to permit the requested multifamily residential, tourist commercial, residential, and service commercial uses on the subject property. And later I'll show the map of where they are. A policy amendment would also create an exception for the proposed development from complying with a number of policies and development permit guidelines in the OCP. The second bylaw is the zoning bylaw. So in general terms, the purpose of zoning amendment bylaw number 1367, 2024 is to amend the District of Ucluelet zoning bylaw number 1160, 2013 to replace the existing site-specific CD6 comprehensive development zone regulations which apply to this property at 221 Monado Road, with the new regulations to match the current development proposal for multifamily, rental multifamily, single-family waterfront, vacation rental, and service commercial uses. And then the third bylaw is, in general terms, the purpose of it is for the housing agreement bylaw number 1368, 2024, is necessary to authorize the district to enter into an attainable ownership housing agreement and a rental housing agreement for the multifamily residential units that could be developed on the proposed lots 1 and 2 respectively. And I will show a map of where those areas are momentarily. I'll now just duck over to a computer so I can share my screen and explain what the content of the bylaws are. There we are. There's a bit of a lag. Okay, so first, just briefly, the site. I think most people are probably aware of the location at 221 Monado Road, which is highlighted in black on the screen. For those who are at home, I would note that it is that entire property. It looks like it's two parts, just that it is bisected by a lighter green area along the edge of the of Olson Bay and the stream, which is district-owned parkland, which is separate from the subject property. So the first of the bylaws, the official community plan amendment bylaw number 1366, 2024. This bylaw would make changes, as I noted, to the existing OCP, a map amendment and a text amendment. The map amendment is to the Schedule A long-range land use plan, which really defines and shows what are the long-range broad land uses, and then zoning, which is a separate bylaw, follows and fits within those broader classes of land uses. So for the subject property, it would designate the areas that are shown on the screen there of the tourist commercial, multifamily, tourist commercial / residential is the designation in the OCP schedule. Multifamily residential, which is the MF, which is the area closer to Peninsula Road, and then on the corner, the service commercial designation is the pocket of commercial that's shown right at the intersection of Monado and Peninsula. And then also to designate the green is the P, Parks and Open Space, which is the municipally owned parkland. Also, there's a text amendment that really addresses some of the existing OCP policies referred to in a new policy, 3.171B. And so the policies, first I'll go through the existing ones. So policy 1.8 is endeavor to understand and consider Indigenous perspectives when making decisions on land use issues. Objective 2A, to develop carefully and use land wisely to ensure that the most sensitive and valuable environmental features are protected and ecological functions are not irreparably disturbed. Policy 2.1, use the regulatory tools available to local governments to ensure new development responds to the community's goal of maintaining a healthy, diverse natural environment. Policy 2.2, maintain significant areas of natural green space and forest cover. Large-scale clearing to accommodate development is not supported. Policy 3.163, a 30-meter wide tree buffer is with no development must be provided along both sides of the Pacific Rim Highway. And then general environmental development permit area guidelines E1, E4, and E7, which are environmental DP areas, and guidelines within environmental development permit areas 5, which is terrestrial ecosystems or mature forest, DP area 6, which is streams and riparian areas, and DP area 7, which is the marine shoreline development permit area. So if basically the bylaw 1366, the adoption of that, then the proposed development could be approved notwithstanding these policies. So the text amendment that is in the official community plan amendment bylaw 1366 would add this policy 3.171B 221 Monado Road, which would say, in consideration of the community housing benefit provided by the proposed development of the property at 221 Monado Road, site clearing and construction is supported, notwithstanding the following objectives and policies adopted in this plan. And then it lists the policies which I referred to in the previous slide. The second bylaw, the zoning amendment bylaw number 1367, 2024, would make changes to the text of the existing zoning bylaw, specifically changing the comprehensive development zoning designation applying to 221 Monado Road, which is the CD6. The CD6 zone doesn't apply to other properties, so it's really just changing the regulations as they apply to the subject land. So it does include a map which shows the sort of development areas, the 5 areas. I have a slide which shows a little clearer. It's basically what is referred to as lot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I'll just step through. So the reference, again, I would, here, I'll see if I can get a pointer that might show better on the screen, particularly for those watching on Zoom. Nope, it's not giving me that control. So I hope my cursor can show up a little bit here. It's not super visible there, but so lot 1 is sort of the referred to as the reddish area there. Lot 2 is kind of green, closer to Peninsula Road. Lot 3 is the darker blue, up sort of on the top of the page. Lot 4 is the commercial corner, if you will, down by Monado and Peninsula. And then lot 5 is the lighter blue, up sort of in the middle there. And I point those out because there's references to those lots as I just step through the zoning. Okay, bear with me while we try to advance the slide. There we are. So, thank you. The CD6 zoning amendment would include a couple of new definitions. And really, the definitions would apply to this property. So it sort of tweaks how they would work, not in other zones throughout the town, but really on this development. And the key, I think, here is the height. And it seems a bit of a mouthful. It's basically redefining the height. And I should just explain that height in the zoning is typically measured from the average natural grade, which is before any regrading or change of the site. On this site, some significant regrading is required because of the flood elevations. And so this definition would allow height to be from the finished grade after all that regrading is done, so that the buildings essentially may otherwise run into problems because the natural grade is somewhat lower than the physical ground level, if you will. The section, next section in the bylaw lists the permitted uses. So on lot 1, the principal use would be multifamily residential with secondary uses of home occupation and secondary suite. The building form for most of the 251 units is small 6-8 unit apartment buildings on 2 stories. I think that's worth noting. So lot 1, multifamily, again, with home occupation or secondary suite. And the secondary suite allows for some of the proposals, the 3-bedroom units could actually be a 2-bedroom with a 1-bedroom suite block off. So the zoning reflects that. Lot 2 would be rental multiple family and home occupation, which is typically a home office, would be still permitted as a secondary use in that zone. Lot 3 is the single family waterfront home. So there are 11 proposed single family lots that could be used for single-family residential uses, or the other principal use is vacation rental. In that, the secondary uses are home occupation, secondary suite, and also vacation rental. Lot 4, which is commercial zone, it would have the same uses that are elsewhere allowed in the CS2 zone, the service commercial CS2 zone, both as principal and secondary uses. And that commercial zone applies to most of the commercial properties, essentially down the block on Peninsula Road, towards the Windsor Plywood and and nearby, essentially. And then lot 5 is, again, multifamily units, also vacation rentals are possible. Secondary uses are home occupation, secondary suite, and vacation rental. And there's a little asterisk there in lot 5. Half of the units, proposed units, could be used for the vacation rental under the development proposal. The lot regulations really set the lot frontage and lot size. That's really to facilitate the subdivision that would create the proposed development parcels, the 5 development parcels. And you'll note that it's under the minimum lot size on lots 1, 3, and 5. It's quite a bit smaller. That's because the development parcels would then be further subdivided as they're proposing to look at essentially the strata subdivision around the individual buildings, so they would need to have a smaller lot size to accommodate that. The next is CD 6.4, regulation around density. Really, essentially, it lists out what are the number of units for each of those proposed lots. And so I would just note that the suites as well are in addition to this. So the maximum density, so in lot 1, there'd be 75 units. Lot 2, 107 multiple family rental units. Lot 3, the single family, it's 11 units. Each of those could have a secondary suite. Lot 4 is commercial, which is really total space, which gets into the next area of regulation. And on lot 5, a total of 58 units, and that's one where, again, half of those could be vacation rentals, but the other half would be residential in use. So the total, and it's highlighted in red there, 251. We noted a typo in the bylaw, which there was a change when the lot 3, at one point, the single family went from 10 lots to 11. The total in the table wasn't adjusted, although the numbers are correct. So that's something that is a typo that we can correct at third reading if the bylaw goes that far. So the maximum size, these regulations are around the building size, the lot coverage, and I would note the accessory buildings. And this really reflects the plans that have been submitted. The CD 6.7 regulations around heights. Again, this is measured from the finished grade, not the pre-existing natural grade, because that would be I think a tripping point for the development otherwise with the grading of the site. 6.8 minimum setbacks. Again, these reflect what is shown on the plans, and I'll show the site plan that's been provided. So essentially, this reflects the location of the buildings illustrated, and so the numbers sort of accommodate what's been laid out on the site plan. And last in the zoning, parking requirements. Again, two typos, they're highlighted in red. It's listed as CD 6.8, but should be CD 6.9. Again, we'll correct that at third reading. The parking requirement that's being proposed is 1 space per dwelling unit for all of the multifamily, plus a visitor space for each of the buildings. And then for the single-family waterfront homes, 3 spaces for each of those lots, which reflects the typical 2 per house plus 1 for a suite. And third bylaw, Housing Agreement Bylaw number 1368, 2024, would authorize the district to enter into housing agreements with the Arif Housing Association for Lot 1, which is the Attainable Ownership Housing Agreement, and Lot 2, Rental Housing Agreement, as drafted by the developer Arif Sustainable Solutions. And the agreements are attached to Schedules A and B to the bylaw and are included in the agenda. At this point, I won't go into all the details of it, but it is there attached to the bylaws and to the agendas. And as I said, I'll just give a brief overview of the site and where those pieces, lot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, lay out. This is just the air photo of the existing property, which was subject to some clearing by the previous owner. And this is a little larger, maybe clearer picture of those. Again, this is our first phase lot. Oh. Get back here. Lot 1, the sort of reddish color. 2, which is the ownership apartment units. Lot 2, which is in the light green along the Peninsula Road side, which is where there are affordable and market rental apartments being proposed. Lot 3, the darker blue around the tip of the property, those are the 11 single-family lots. And lot 4, commercial on the corner. Lot 5, again, apartments, which are ownership, could be rental, and half of those could be vacation rentals. And then again, the numbers that I overviewed previously. I think the only thing that I didn't touch on was on lot 4, the commercial. It's about 12,000 square feet total within the building they're proposing, or at least within the zoning, what it would allow. And in total, there are 55 buildings being proposed as part of the development, or at least principal buildings. There are some surfboard sheds and stuff, accessory buildings as well. This just shows the site plan, the layout of the above. And I think it's useful just to note access to the property would be, the primary access would be off Monado Road, so it's on the right-hand side of the screen. Again, I'm not sure how visible the cursor is there. So Monado Road is a public road. It would be, right now, as people know, it's a fairly narrow gravel road. It would be upgraded to municipal standards. And then there's essentially 3 access points off of Monado into the development. One that would go over to lots 1, 2, and 4. And that would be the connection point for water, sewer, and then beyond that, those would be private roads. And then further north, there's 2 connections for Lot 3 and Lot 5. Similarly, that would be the connection point for municipal services and maybe private development infrastructure beyond that. And then the last slide here is just, as I said, we're on the grading and the the red lines are where the retaining walls would be proposed. So they're raising up areas because of essentially to address the flood risk, that the areas that are surrounded by retaining walls will be raised up to the 10.7 meter elevation that is deemed to be the flood construction elevation. And that you'll know that the waterfront homes are outside of that. The structures themselves would raise the livable space above that 10.7 meter elevation. And so that's where the height definition needed to be changed, because those other areas are essentially the ground would come up, and so that the measurement of the height of the buildings wouldn't be penalized by having a lower previous grade. So that's essentially the overview that I have prepared. At this point, I think back to you, Mayor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Does council have any questions for staff? No, seeing none. We are now, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Gregg. We're now moving on to the applicant presentation section of this public hearing. Would the applicant like to address council?
Well, hi. My name's Joshua Hunt. I'm a local, fairly new local. I guess we're all local. The fact that we're here, I live in Rupert Street, and I have the fantastic opportunity to share with Mayor, Council and the wider community about what is planned for 221 Monardo. I thought that maybe I should start today to talk a little bit about the who, the why and the what, rather than just the what, because there's been quite a few questions going around and I want to try and address some of these questions. We are local, feel free to come and ask us. We only live up the road. You can talk to us anytime. But first of all, who? You might notice that I don't have a Canadian accent. I'll try my best to create one, but no, don't do that. Australian by birth, son of a preacher man. Basically, I grew up in a caravan, travelling Australia, starting churches, left home when I was 16 years of age. I did an aircraft engineering apprenticeship, so I'm an aircraft engineer by trade. I went out on my own when I turned 20 years of age and I had a wife and young child. Started my own business renovating houses, one renovation at a time, two renovations. Started into construction, building one at a time, two at a time, 10 at a time. By the age of about 30, we had a substantial company. We were building about 300 to 500 homes a year in Australia, predominantly single-family, multi-family homes. By the time I hit 36, I'm 53 now. By the time I hit 36, we were doing some fairly substantial things, and this was a pivotal part in our construction life. What we did is I thought I was good at construction. We were building hundreds and hundreds of homes. But then I bought a remote property and I discovered I wasn't as good as I thought that I was. We bought an island and we built a resort on the island, and just as we were finishing that project, the global financial crisis of 2008 hit, and the bank that we were financed with went under. That was a really weird experience. You don't expect your bank to go under. Anyway, they dragged down every developer in Queensland, Australia on the same day. If they foreclosed on the entire book on the same day. It was a very, very difficult time of life for us, because what it basically threw our entire life into turmoil. We had hundreds of staff, we had millions of dollars in the bank as a company, and the bank basically seized it all and threw us in, and it took us about 2.5 years to actually unturn that, where the bank then unraveled all of the defaults against us and said that we weren't at fault. But by then, it probably cost us about 75% of our entire net worth to date, which was a bit of a challenge. But what it did teach us was that, we all go through cycles in life, and when someone's down, it doesn't mean that they're out. If someone's struggling and they don't have a place to live, it doesn't mean that they're lesser of a person. They might just be at a different phase of their life, and that's the phase that we had to go through. But anyway, what it did do in my construction career, I thought I've got to be better. I've got to build faster. I've got to build cheaper. And so we started to do more in the construction world than what we were previously doing. And I moved my architect and my builder to China, and we started to build a modular manufacturing facility in China, and it went exceptionally well. Within about 18 months, we had a factory to the size that we could produce a 100-room hotel in 8 days. We had a lot of staff there. We were doing a lot. We built around the world. We then set up another modular manufacturing facility in Kazakhstan, and had another 500 staff in Kazakhstan, again doing substantial things in Kazakhstan. And then we started building some low-cost properties. We built 1,000 houses in Peru with a German partner. So I say all of that to say we've had a lot of varied experience in the construction world. It hasn't all just been residential. We built hotels, we built in remote locations, we built all over the world. But when we came to Canada, we thought, well, how should we build here? You know, Canadians, Americans, and Australians like to live in a similar way, and that is we like to live in large, open, volumetric spaces. You know, sometimes in England, we lived in England for a while, you know, the kitchen's in a separate room. They have all of these tiny little separate rooms, but we like to live in large, open, volumetric spaces. So we wanted to take on and look to build differently. And so that's when we started to look at, well, how do we build here? But this is probably not the platform to tell you how we're building and how the construction, but what I wanted to share with you is why we're doing the 221 Monado project and how we got to the place of where it's actually been designed. We didn't come to Ucluelet to be a developer. I actually have no desire to be a developer at all, and it actually does make my skin crawl a little bit when people call me a developer, but we actually came to Ucluelet as a way of actually delivering affordable housing under a construction methodology that since then the Canadian government has got very, very excited about and given us some very large grants because they believe that our construction methodology could actually solve the affordability housing crisis across Canada. So we're really quite excited about that. But what we wanted to do is I just wanted to share you the reasons why we're making some of the decisions in the 221 Monado project. And that is, it was about 20 years ago, and you know how the real estate market in every market goes up and down. Sometimes you can sell your house in a matter of moments, and then you can sit on the market for months. Well, we were in one of those down cycles, and we had a lot of things under construction. We had a lot of product being built, and we had no choice but to think, how are we going to continue? Like, you know, we've got all of this product. How are we going to continue? Anyway, what we decided to do as a company is that we would leave our developers' margin and our construction profits in the project. And in Australia, they call it vendor finance. In Canada, they call it vendor take back. But we would leave that profit into a project and start vendor financing people that couldn't otherwise afford to buy houses into homes. It was a way at the time commercially just to keep the wheels moving. But we sold a lot of houses that way because what it did, it enabled people, and let me tell you, most of them were business people that worked for themselves that couldn't qualify for a loan, that they could get like a 70% loan, and so with that larger deposit, all of a sudden they could get into houses. Anyway, it was a few years ago, I was in Australia, and I was accosted in the street by a guy by the name Artie, and he says, "Josh, you probably don't remember me, but about 15 years ago, you loaned us money to actually buy our first house." Now, the truth is, I didn't really loan the money. I left money in the project, and it was a strategy to keep the company alive. But he said, "You loaned us money to actually buy our first house." He said, "Since then, we've bought and sold numbers of houses." And he said, "It's weird that I see you, especially I don't even live in Australia." He says, "It's weird that I've run into you," because he says, "I was talking to my wife just last week, and she said, and he said to his wife, you know, the only reason our kids go to private school and we live in our own home today is because Josh lent us money for our deposit 15 years ago." And it was that really struck a chord in my thought process many years ago about the value of having people become homeowners. when people become homeowners, it actually changes their generational wealth position for generations, for their kids. It changes the way that they live in the society, the way that they live in the community. I believe that homeowners actually makes a better community. And so I wanted to tell you that because some of the decisions that have been made about 221 Monado have been made with this same thought and same philosophy in mind of how can we make Euclusians homeowners. How can we lift? We don't want to give people handouts. We want to give people hand-ups. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, because we believe in the transformation power of home ownership. Anyway, the actual motto or the mission or the purpose of our company, IGV Nexus, which is our construction company, is to provide high-quality, affordable homes, fostering generational financial stability for families worldwide. That's what we want our company to stand for. That's why we do what we do. And so, that being said, one of the biggest problems that Euclulit face, actually British Columbia face, and in fact Canada face, is housing affordability. And so the question is, how do we solve these issues? The thing is this, the math has got a math, and we all have a boss. So what does that mean? The math has got a math. What that means is that things have got to add up mathematically. You know, for those, I've got a 3-year-old grandchild. The math doesn't add up for her. She'll stand on the edge of a table and you look at that and you say that counterweight, that thing's about to fall over. But the math doesn't add up for her. But we live in a world where the math has got to add up. And so I want to take you through some of that. And then the second part I said is we all have a boss. You know, a couple of weeks ago here in this council chamber, is this a council chamber? I think it is. There was a discussion around the mandate that's been handed down to municipalities across the province about the housing needs assessment. Well, the truth is this. We live in Euclulit, but we're not isolated. Euclulit is a part of the province of British Columbia. British Columbia is a part of Canada. Now, there are federal and provincial mandates that get handed down to municipalities that tell them what to do. I know that we like to think, you know, this is where it all's decided. But the mayor and council have to manage this constantly about, we do get paid money as Euclusians from the federal and provincial government, and they hand out mandates. One of those mandates is the housing needs assessment. Now, there's actually been articles, if you look this up, there's been municipalities around the country that haven't actually met their housing needs assessment, and they're on what they call the naughty list. And the naughty list means that they are going to get less money from the province and less money from the federal when it comes to the handout. So that, what I mean to say is, we're all accountable to somebody. The mayor and the councillors might decide, oh no, well, we actually don't want any housing in Euclulit. Well, that would probably put a bullet in Euclulit, because down the track, all of a sudden, the province is going to stop funding it, the feds are going to stop funding it, and it doesn't work like that. We form part of a bigger community. And so we were discussing, not just we, I was listening, the housing needs assessment. And the housing needs assessment for Euclulit is around 250 new dwellings need to be provided to Euclulit, and preferably affordable. They give you a target of how much is affordable over the next 5 years. So the question is, how do we develop or how do we deliver affordable housing in a place that's not very affordable? You've probably discovered that. You know, the grey team's here, Brian's here, there's people in real estate here that realise that affordability, this isn't the peak of affordability, Euclulit. There are other places around the world and around Canada that are a little bit more affordable. But how do we deliver it? Well, this is where the math has got a math. And I'm getting to 221 Monado because we're going to talk about how it actually comes together. But I've seen, and I want to address some of the questions that have been flying around on social media about some of the decisions that have been made around 221 Monado. One of those things is we should be building smaller complexes. Those smaller 4 at a time. Well, the truth is, to build 4 at a time, if you wanted to buy a block of land, and what we've discovered is that the municipality doesn't have land to give. They don't have a massive parcel of land to say, oh, we could build affordable housing here. They just don't have the land. And so therefore the land has got to be acquired. There isn't a lineup of people in town that actually want to give you their parcels of land. Everybody wants to monetize that. And so if you were to buy a block of land in Ucluelet to build a 4 condo complex on, I can tell you that that's going to probably cost somewhere between $800 and $1 million. If you break that down into 4, that means that the land component of a condo is about $200,000. By the time you then add all of your settlement costs and your architecturals and your planning costs, and you're probably looking at around $250,000, $300,000 land component for a condo. Well, that's just the land. You want to build a condo on that land. So if you then say, okay, well, how much does it cost to build in town? You know, we got some builders here in town. They'll tell you that it costs around $400 a square foot to build in Ucluelet. If you build 1,000, well, yeah, there's people saying north of that. Let's just be conservative and say $400 a square foot. If you build 1,000 square foot apartment, that means it's going to cost you $400,000. You've got your land component for $300,000. You've got a cost base of $700,000 for a brand new 1,000 square foot condo. If you then, who's going to build that? Well, obviously a developer comes in, they want to make 20% or 25% on their money. That's why all of a sudden, when you see new product enter the market in Ucluelet, it starts at around $850,000 because you just can't build cheaper than that. So as we look at the affordability side of it, there's only three places we can save money: the land, the construction, and the developer's margin. So if we're going to deliver affordable housing in Ucluelet, there's only 3 places we can save the money: the land, the build, and the developer's margin. So let me just quickly talk about that. As far as 221 Monado is concerned, some people are concerned about the size. Well, I have to tell you is that for full transparency, we've contracted to buy that site for $10 million. Now, that is not expensive for the site. It's just what the site costs. I would love it to be cheaper, but that's what it is. If you break that down per apartment, what you'll find is that when you can buy a larger parcel of land and put more properties on it, you actually bring down dramatically the cost per unit content. That's the purpose of doing that. Not to build 250 apartments all on day one, but to try and bring down the overall cost of the development or the land component per project, per condo. So what we've done, and you saw on the map how we've divided it into 2. The part that they called more the waterfront, the southeastern part, that carries, it's about 30% of the density, but it's carrying over 50% of the land component. The reason is because we're trying to reduce the land component in the affordable section. And we've managed to bring the land component per condo down to about $60,000 per condo by doing them larger like that. Now, I would love to be doing them 4 at a time on a block of land. But there's nowhere in town that I'm going to be able to buy a block of land for $240,000 that you can build 4 condos on. It's just not going to happen. And so that's why the project needs to be a little bit larger. It doesn't mean that we build it all at once. It means that we build it in stages as the community demands it. So lot 1, stage 1 is 29 apartments. That's what will come onto the market first. Lot 2 is another, how many on stage 2? 30 something, I've forgotten. Stage 1, lot 2, That will only come on when Lot 1, Stage 1 sells out the 29 apartments. You won't go into building Lot 1, Stage 2 until Lot 1, Stage 1 is done. I hope that makes sense. So what we've done as far as the land cost is concerned is look at reducing the cost by actually spreading it across a larger number of apartments. The second place you can save money is the build cost. Well, that really comes in if you want to click onto the ERIF websites, erif.ca, go into the housing part, and you can see the way that we're building. We believe that we're going to bring down the cost quite substantially as a percentage. It's not the place to talk about that, but that's how we're looking to save money on the construction part. The last part that you can save money is in the developer margin. Well, in this particular case, the developer is the ERIF Housing Association. It's a not-for-profit. There's zero development margin in this project. We are not looking to make any money from this project whatsoever. So there was all sorts of things going around social, greedy developers, doing. This thing is being built by a housing association, and all of the margin is being passed on to the end users. So that in that particular case, we tried to bring the cost down by actually spreading it across a larger project. We tried to bring the build cost down by having a smarter way of actually constructing. And then the third way is there is no developer margin in this project. So they're the three ways that we are looking to deliver affordable, attainable housing project that I believe is going to set a new benchmark in quality as well as energy efficiency and affordability for UQLIT. There will always be people that will say, that's not cheap enough. It's true. It probably isn't. But we're going to do our best to try and bring the price down. And one thing that I can tell you, that things will never get cheaper. I would love for them to get cheaper, but the escalation of prices only ever seems to go north. And so we need to do the best that we can as quickly as we possibly can. So that said, I would like to share with you, if you would like, the 221 Monado Road project. Would you like me to go over it, Mayor and Council?
Yes, please.
Sorry about that long lead-in. I thought it was important that people understand the why. So if I can share my screen, I'll do that on Zoom. Is that the right way to do it? Jody, can you open yours? I'll do it on yours.
Yes. You need to follow the link to the Zoom account. I just don't see you.
It looks like it's dropped off. I'll try and get it back on. Okay, if I just raise my hand, you should be able to see me.
I see you now. I will promote you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the project at 221 Monado. I will apologise for some confusion. This render is not a a coloured render. It's sepia. Somebody made a comment that it looks like army barracks. It's sort of like looking at a monochrome black and white photo and saying everybody's wearing grey. Sorry about the confusion because there is colour in it, but that is just showing form rather than architectural style. So what we have here is 75 attainable, 32 affordable rentals, 75 attainable rentals, 29 market, 29 vacation, and 11 waterfront homes. This video goes for the best part. I wonder if you can hear that. It's only music. So that gives, let's stop that. We don't want to hear myself twice. That gives you a bit of an idea of the layout of the site, but I'll quickly go through here as far as the master planning is concerned. The first thing is we looked at the housing. We looked at the construction methodology, the speed of construction, the quality of the specifications, the fit outs, and looking to lower that cost, and that comes through the IGV Nexus building process. We also have in our homes smart homes, so we have a degree of like you can turn your lights on and off from an app on your phone, and there's numbers of smart elements built into the homes, as well as energy efficiencies control as data control. As far as the housing is concerned, we've broken it up into attainable home ownership. We worked really quite closely with Mayor and Council about the value of bringing people into home ownership. And so that's where we developed an attainable home ownership program. The challenge that we have is that all of the government funding is no longer in existence to actually help people as far as building to sell at attainable. They're only doing affordable rentals, and we're a bit disappointed by that, so that's where we had to come up with our own attainable home ownership program. Then we have affordable and market rentals and the single family homes. We have a green energy component. So our buildings, the energy modelling has now been completed, and our buildings will be built to a step code 4, which is really fantastic. It's one below really, well, step code 5, which is where the passive house standards start. Those people who came to our open house, we had the solar guy here, Ken, and he's done some solar modelling over the entire project. And with a step code 4 and the size of our roofs, it looks like that over 80% of the project will be net neutral. So therefore, if we can, we're looking at numbers of grants, working with Mayor and Council and the municipality about getting some solar grants so that it actually doesn't get added to the cost of the apartments at all. But we think that it'd be amazing to have a complete solar system right across the entire project. That means that it's going to fundamentally be net neutral, so the people living there actually won't have electricity bill, which would be amazing. The sustainability piece. Sustainability is all about what ERIF stands for. So we've got the green energy piece going on here, where we'd really like to go down the solar line where we have net neutral. But then we're also working in regards to a water usage and saving system. And we've priced that up looking for grants, because we're looking for grants for all of these type of peripheral things that the government's prepared to sponsor, which will just make the houses even better and more cost efficient for people to actually live in. But there's a water usage and saving mechanism where you have a tank maybe under the building, and your rainwater runs into the tank, and the top 30% of the tank slows the surge down into stormwater. So it's much better for the environment. You don't get such a massive rush when you get a big downpour that everything just races into stormwater. It slows that surge down. That about 2/3 of the tank are then recycled and goes back into the apartments to flush your toilets. And we reckon across the project we can save about 1 million litres a year, which I think is just fantastic. Water's a very precious resource and we need to look after our water. Then we looked at the community around the entire project, about social spaces. The reason for the commercial up in the corner, which was lot 4, the reason for that is there was a lot of people very concerned about the co-op during busy seasons, and we love the co-op. A side note, we had a family holiday in another country over Christmas, and I was crook as a dog. I was on drip. And my wife Paula kept saying, "What can I get you?" The only thing that I felt like eating in the world was the Harvest grain loaf from the co-op. It's the only thing, and I couldn't get it. I'm in another country. Anyway, we love the co-op. So the social spaces, making sure that there is places where you can get the basic essentials within the site. The connection to transportation's got good bus routes. We're putting EV charging stations through there so that as we move to electric vehicles, about 15 charging stations throughout the facility. And then good interconnections with all of the bike paths connections. So bike paths and walking paths walk right through the thing, connection over to the main bike path if you feel like pedaling to Tofino, which why would you? But anyway, if that's what you felt like doing. And then also the top floor of the commercial space, we're looking at working with Josh Jenkins in creating a mixed-use office type environment and create some entrepreneurial shared office type space. So we think that gives you a big picture of some of the things that we were looking at from a master plan point of view. Now, something that Bruce showed you was this different coloured. This red colour is the attainable home ownership. Now, attainable and affordable are not definitions that we've come up with. They're not even numbers that we come up with. Attainable and affordable is set, the word affordable rentals is set by BC Hydro or CMHC. And they actually tell us what the rents have got to be. So we can't say it's going to be this rent. If you're financed through CMHC, they will tell you what you will charge for a 1-2 bedroom apartment under the affordable scheme. Attainable, the word attainable is a mathematical calculation that is highlighted in the OCP. And so we call this attainable home rentals because they fall within a price point that falls under the definition of attainable in the OCP. So what we have is 18 multiplexes through here, a total of 75 condos across both of those stage 1 that we want to make available to people to purchase because we believe in the power of home ownership. As you can see, there are over 2 stages. We won't go and start building stage 2 until stage 1 has been fully sold out because we're a not-for-profit. We can't afford to build stuff to hold it. If it's not sold, we can't afford to build it. There's no profit margin to hold this stuff. And so therefore it can only be basically built when it's sold. Stage 2 is across here, which is the affordable rentals, looking to fund that through CMHC and also a possible top up with BC Housing. And then across here we have the waterfront homes. The purpose of the waterfront homes, we are living in town, but we plan to continue to live in town. This is where our house will be. Feel free to come down and see us. So we are planning to live on site. We believe in the project. We think it's amazing. We want to live in the community on an ongoing basis, and that's where we will live. So of those 11 waterfront homes, 5 of them are already being purchased, and we charge them full price to our own team and staff as a way of helping reduce the cost of the land component to the remainder of the project. And then we've got lot 5, which is some more residential in the middle, and then the commercial up in the corner. So that gives you a bit of an idea of the layout of the master plan. The attainable home ownership section, we talked a little bit about that. That's lot 1. In lot 1, stage 1, 29 Lot 1, Stage 2 is 46. And this gives you a little bit of an idea of an artist impression of what we're looking like. We spent a lot of time with some of council explaining to them what we're doing from a specifications point of view. We don't believe affordable or attainable should be a lower quality. We believe that you should be able to be smart about what you do and deliver high quality. Like, to give you a bit of an idea, the bench top you can see here is really poor up there, but you know, our bench tops in our homes, 40 mil edge, quartz tops with waterfall edges, so that it gives a feeling of luxury, and so we really want to do this well. It's very important to us that this is an amazing and a beautiful place to be and live. So that's the attainable home ownership section. Then we have 107 condos. Let me clear up 107 condos. We talk about 250 apartments. The truth is, there's not really 250 apartments. There's 250 apartments. There's not really 250 apartments. Have I confused you yet? Okay, great. The reason is because what we have, I'll jump forward a couple of slides and it's difficult to see, but our 3-bedroom apartments have actually got, this is where you come into the door here, and there's a little hallway here that you could keep this door open, and then this is your 3rd bedroom. But the 3rd bedroom has got its own fully contained kitchenette. It's got its own ensuite bathroom. It's got its own lounge suite, and it's got its own separate bedroom, and it has its own entry. So your 3-bedroom apartment is actually a private suite. So if we call it multi-generational, if you're living with parents or if you're living with a teenager, they can have their own space. Or you could even separate it and it could be a separate mortgage helper. And so that's the way that we've designed our 3 bedrooms. Our 2 bedrooms, 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom. Our 3 bedrooms, 3 bedroom, 3 bathroom. And the 3 bedrooms have got their own separate entry and their own kitchenette. So going back to 107 condos, 107 condos is actually counting all of the 3 bedrooms as a 2 bedroom and a 1 bedroom. So if you wanted to count them all as a 3 bedroom rather than a 2 bedroom and 1 bedroom, there's quite a large number less than that. But the way that CMHC have advised us to do it is to count them individually, because they can give you more grant money, and the more grant money you get, the more affordable they can become. So it's a bit of a definitional thing. Sorry to let you in on that secret. The community. We're fairly new to town, and therefore we want this project to be for locals. That's the whole purpose of it. It's not about let's do a development and sell it to foreigners and make the most money we can. A not-for-profit isn't there to make money. This is something to deliver affordable and attainable home ownership to people that live in the community. And so therefore, Jody's on our team. She has started to create a committee that's going, a local committee made up of some fantastic people, and some of them are here today, that'll help make the decisions about who gets what and at what stage and all that. So they are going to be facilitating it. So what you can be assured of is local people making the decision about who goes in. And so I just also wanted to highlight that to give you that confidence about what's happening, about who's making those decisions. There's the mixed 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments and the sizes. That's all on public record. There is what we call the Monado Bay residence. This is the waterfront homes. Beautiful. That's where we're going to live. At the same time, these are built with exactly the same building methodology as our apartments. And in fact, the kitchens and the bathrooms in these are exactly the same as the 3-bedroom apartments. It's exactly the same. And so what we're showing is that we are happy to live in the same spaces as what these other people are living in right across the site. This gives you a bit of an idea of the commercial and retail precinct at the front there, to put commercial down below and some offices above on that front corner of the site. And the purposes of that is to ensure that once the project really starts to fill out, whether that's in 6 months or 6 years, that there is enough infrastructure around to support that, and it doesn't overwhelm the other infrastructure that's in town from a retail point of view. The park dedication. Obviously, this site, 221 Monado, has gone through numbers of iterations. What this is showing the 30-metre setback that is now being given back to the district. So all of that land at the front was previously part of the site. It totals about a total of 36% of the site. I think the requirement is 5%. So 35.6% of the site has been given back to the district as parklands. Here's a bit of an aerial that shows you the clearing that's already happened on the site. There has been quite a lot of damage to the site. It's been like that for quite a number of years. We have a 70-page environmental report that actually has about 40 recommendations of how to protect the remaining trees and biology, with also quite a comprehensive replanting plan of how to actually regenerate the site. That's something that's very important to us. At the same time, I want to be really clear. You've got to crack an egg to make an omelette. And so you do, when you're going through construction, you do have to do some clearing, but then you can put back. And so we are very much committed to putting back, but the clearing isn't anywhere near as substantial as I've heard some people make out. To give you a bit of an idea of the work that's been done, we've had over 22 different technical assessments with over 1,200 pages of specialised reports. This isn't something that we've just sort of saying, oh, let's give this a go, mate. It's something that's had a lot of planning. There's been a lot of work done. We've had just about every type of professional scale this property from top to bottom. Environmental consultants. There's actually been 3 different environmental consultants go over this project in the last 3 years. I want to just, because I want to answer some of the questions that people have been asking on social. The last meeting that came up, it was brought to our attention, we'd never heard of this before, about there being a potential wetlands on the site. I want to deal with that. We've had an environmental professional walk this site from top to bottom with the boots on, every inch of the site in the past 3 months. So after we heard this, it was interesting that the report said that this was issued in 2023, but we can't find anywhere on record that this plan has come from. So what we did is we contacted, after we read that, we contacted our environmental specialists, and I'll actually read you just because it's been an issue today on social, and I want to make sure that it's clear. So an email that was from our team to Aquaparian, who is an independent environmental specialist that's been out to the site, and he was asked very clearly, I want to confirm the understanding of the provincial OCP wetlands mapping that shows the site, whether it has wetlands on it. The BC Wetlands Atlas, and there's a URL, key is below. I think it just shows a base layer of a WL 1 to 50K, a BC Water Ledge Shed Atlas. My understanding is that it's not a wetlands designated just on this layer. Can you please confirm? He comes back to us, and this is what he said. I will check the BC Wetlands Atlas, full stop. 2 lines later, he says, I just went to the site and it appears that the green is forest coverage. But if you click on the Wetlands Atlas base layer, 1 to 50K and 1 to 20K, no actual wetlands feature occurs for the Monado Road site, which is good for you. Also, the site has been cleared a few years ago by others and there's no evidence of wetlands. This is what we've been sent by the environmental scientists this week. So all is good. Maybe let's talk next week about further projects. So then our staff goes back, just to be clear, Thanks for coming back to it. Just to be clear, so we really appreciate you confirming this in the BC. You're right. We see that there's no wetlands that's marked on this, and you go into this level, you go into the, and then she says there's also been a aquarium report done in 2017, no designation of wetlands. There was another environmental survey done by another company in 2023, also no designation of wetlands. So where the wetlands thing comes from is a bit of a mystery. The Thumber report, 2023, the conclusion of it reads this. Based on the result of Phase 1 SA, Thumber did not identify any areas of potential environmental concerns, such as a low potential of soil, groundwater, or soil vapor contamination on the site. Further investigation is not recommended at this time. That is the response that we've had from environmental specialists this week. So I just wanted to, we take these things very seriously. We like to employ the best of the best because we like to get the job done properly. I'm not sure where that wetland stuff came from, but that is the official results that we've actually had feedback. The other question that's been asked is, what about the infrastructure capacity planning? We've got a sewerage problem over that side of the site, over that side of town. So we've been working very closely with James from the district and Dwayne, that they are going through various stages of upgrading certain pump stations, and they have a certain amount of capacity, and they believe as they go through, and if you remember a couple of council meetings ago, there was quite a budget that was approved to actually upgrade the infrastructure. So we worked very closely with James about the timing of when these things come out. And he believes that the timing of this project and the timing of the upgrades is that there'll be enough adequate sewage to service this site by the time the site is done. That said, we also have a backup plan. Understanding that our entire company, EREF, actually specialises in infrastructure, what we did is we worked with some professionals to work out how could we slow down the flow into the existing sewage system to ensure that it wasn't overloaded. And we designed a system that you could build a large tank that's on a timer, that you could actually do a slow release. It's a bit like we'll release into the sewage system when everybody's asleep, when the thing's at its lowest. And so even though there's upgrades happening and the district seem to think that there'll be adequate sewage there at appropriate time, we are also have a backup plan that even if those upgrades aren't done, we have it covered. So that is an update of who, why, and what. Sorry that it's taken so long. Open to any questions if I'm not sure whether they come from Mayor or anybody else, but if not, I'll call it a day.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. That was a great presentation. Does council have any questions for Mr. Hunt? Oh, could you stop sharing your screen so we can see our other councillors, please?
Sure.
There they are. Any questions from council for Mr. Hunt? Councillor Anderson?
I got a couple. Can you hear me? Is that on? Is that? Yeah, I can hear myself yet. Asking about the solar part of this. What happens when it's winter and there's not a lot of sun out there? I remember at the open house hearing something about this, but I was wondering how that worked.
Yeah, the solar guy, we're not off grid, which is great. If you're off grid, you need to have like 150% of solar so that when you're actually in winter, you have enough solar during the day. What we've been doing is we're not just providing solar. We actually, there's a really smart inverter as well as a battery that goes with each particular apartment that is about 10 kilowatts. What we're looking to do is let me answer this question specifically. During winter, you do get less sun. And some of them, because the sun comes over difference, will actually get less than optimal in regards to, I don't need the sun today to actually run my apartment for a 24-hour period. But that's where the battery comes into it. And so what we've got is we've got battery backup. And my question to the solar guy was this: could we put the apartments onto a sleeper mode? In other words, maybe you can't turn your heating up to 25 degrees C, you can only go to 18. You know, maybe your shower's lukewarm and not, you know, like boiling hot. Can we put the apartments into sleeper mode so that they would be continually self-reliant through the winter period? No problem in summer, but through the winter. So in other words, our consumption of electricity is less than the amount that you generate on a winter's day. And he believed that with a couple of tweaks with the smart home, that what we do is we could put our homes into a sleeper mode and actually produce enough electricity in our apartments that even if the power was down for a 3-day state, we'd still exist. Like, you know, we still got internet, we can watch TV, and maybe we wear a jumper. Sorry, you don't say sweater. Yeah, so, thanks for the you can interpret for me.
You'll be crook as a dog.
You'll be crook as a dog. That's correct.
One other quick question through the mayor. I know people that are waiting for housing here quite badly, and the price is definitely an issue. What would be this single greatest? Is there anything that would raise the prices of these? Is there anything you can think of that might change what the numbers are out today? How confident can we be on that, and what would be a factor that we would have to worry about for prices increasing?
Let me tell you very quickly what development is. Development's a running race. And what you do is, as soon as you hit the go button, it's a running race between getting a development finished and the bank killing you. Because let me tell you what happens. Do you know how every now and then we have a bank holiday? The bank don't have a holiday. They still charge you interest. And so the biggest problem in delivering an affordable project is speed. It's speed to market. It's how fast can you get into the construction process, and how fast can you get through it. And so timely delays in planning, then timely delays on site. You've got to try and eliminate all of those. The smarter that you can be to get something through. To give you an idea, Lot 1, Stage 1, as you've seen, Lot 1, Stage 1 has got a build price of $20 million. The cost to service that is $20,000 a week. So to service $20,000 a week in a project that has no developer margin, if that gets delayed, where's the cost going? To the end user. Why? Because there's no developer margin we're trying to eat up here. So that's where the real skill has got to be, and we've all got to work together. And Dwayne and I have discussed this from the very outset, that we've got to be speed. It's all about, don't do exactly the same thing and expect a different result. We all need to think differently. We need to work as fast as what we possibly can, because every section of a delay simply means that prices go up, whether it's construction costs, whether it's inflation, whether it's the bank just chewing out their interest. Time.
Thank you.
Any questions from other councillors? No, doesn't look like it. All right. Well, thank you very much again for your presentation.
Pleasure.
So we are now moving on to the public input section of the public hearing. This is the first call for speakers. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Please raise your hand. Yes. Barbara. And just a reminder to state your name and address, please.
My name is Barbara Schramm. I'm at 1958 Bay Street, and I'm here as a representative of the Wild Pacific Trail Society today. I'm not here to talk about housing, which clearly the community needs. The Trail Society is laser focused on protecting the environment and obviously trail corridors to help protect the environment has been our passion since 1999. So for this proposal, first of all, we applaud dedicating the parkland in the previous proposals. We're very happy to see that. And we also applaud reducing speed limits on the highway. Excellent, 100%. Where the concern crashes in is for the sensitive mudflats at Olson Bay. We're rather terrified at the number of people being proposed for that property with no way to mitigate what's going to happen to the mudflats. We see pictures in the proposal showing kayak storage, which I think to a purchaser implies, well, we're going to be able to put our kayak there and drag it out to the water right across the mudflats. Well, I can tell you dragging a kayak across the mudflats is going to create a great deal of damage. So we really object to there being any sort of boat access, boat launches, and foot traffic onto the mudflats. The Trail Society proposed, and it was part of the original vision for this property, to build an interpretive trail that traces the coastline, that creates a continuous route, eventually all the way along the harbor, and up to Ancient Cedars Trail, so that foot traffic has somewhere to go and they can enjoy the environment, enjoy the views, enjoy the cove, but not walk across it. Without this trail connection, that's not going to happen. People are people. They want to go for a walk. They're going to go down on the mudflats. The previous proposal had on title that that trail would be built at the developer's expense before occupancy. Now, I'm not clear if that's been removed already, but it certainly was passed by council that it should be removed. We find that very concerning because now the burden of doing that trail will fall to the community, fundraising, and obviously delays, and we fear that this density will come online before there can be any prevention to the damage to the mudflats. So that's the concerns I'd like to express. And the Trail Society stands ready to back this up and reestablish getting that trail built in advance of the occupants coming online by the hundreds in the proposal. And it's not intuitive that you're doing damage if you go out on the mudflats. You don't realize that the footprints don't wash away, that the damage is permanent, and it's a very sensitive ecosystem that feeds the marine food chain. And you can't take back damage. So we're very concerned about that, and we'd like to peel that back and put it back into this proposal before the development permit stage. We'd also like a reconsideration of cutting down the forest right to the edge of the highway. I'm very concerned at the precedence that waiving that forest corridor into town creates. I just learned today the other side of Minato's coming up for sale. Of course, they're going to ask for the same sort of forest clearing that would also create a clear cut coming into our community. Is there no way to rejig this proposal to leave a tree buffer along the highway? I fully recommend that as the green space that we need coming into our community. which could contain a foot traffic along the highway connecting over to Ancient Cedars. With buildings right against the road, is there going to be space for that kind of traffic? That's not clear to me. So we like a couple things, but we're concerned about the environment here. Yes,
Thanks for your comments, Barbara.
you're flagging?
I think your time is up.
My time's up. Good. Okay.
Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Courtney Cullen, and I live at 827 Lorne White Place. And I'm just actually going to read a letter that I wrote recently to council in support of the project. I hope this finds you doing well and enjoying the new year. I won't take up too much of your time, but I wanted to write you in support of the proposed ARIF project Serenity Landing at 221 Monado Road. I've been a full-time resident of Ucluelet for 4 years. I've worked for and with several local businesses, and I now run my own. I'm invested in this community, and I wish to stay here long term. I'm not in a financial position to purchase a home in Ucluelet. The prices of homes here shot up well beyond anything I can afford before I even moved here. That does not mean, however, that I shouldn't be entitled to have a place to rent that I can feel at home in. A place which I can afford, which does not cost more than 50% of my income, and which I won't have to worry about being kicked out of when May rolls around. I believe that all the working people in this town who keep it running, who contribute to its success, and who are part of the fabric of this community deserve the same. Right now, the housing supply does not even come close to meeting the demand, and this is especially true for long-term rentals. Thus, the prices stay high, and the few livable rentals go only to those who can either pay sky-high rent or those who can network themselves into a decent place. It's ridiculous, unfair, and inhumane. I support this project because it includes plans to build a significant enough number of units as to actually make a dent in these issues, to add enough units as to potentially stabilize rental market prices, to finally make quality rentals, which I think was made really clear tonight, available to citizens of varying income levels, and to offer year-round, dependable leases to the many people who have been subjected to the annual tourist season shuffle. I appreciate the work you all do on Ucluelet's behalf, and I urge you to vote in favor of the ARIF project as a way to continue this work. It's often property owners who are on the microphone at town meetings, and I can certainly understand their investment. But there are plenty of people in town who aren't able to come to meetings, but whose futures are just as meaningfully decided at them. They may be working 2 jobs, some may be single parents, and many are being forced to move every 6 months. This quiet working class deserves the dignity of having housing that they can rely on and be proud of. And I believe that a vote for this project is a vote for these too often voiceless members of our community. If this project is approved, I truly think it will make a discernible and positive impact here in Ucluelet, and I would like to add my own voice to those in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, Dawn.
Thank you. My name is Don Ferris. I live at 855 Barclay Place. I'm going to be pretty brief. My wife and I came to Ucluelet in 2006. Well, we came to the West Coast in 2006. And we wanted to live in a beautiful place with some nice people. We took a look at some properties in Tofino, and we took a closer look at Ucluelet following that look. One of the things, this is back in 2006, that was impressed upon us was the quality of the planning that the District of Ucluelet had gone through. It was pointed out to us that the district had won an international award for its community planning. And this was in the era when the district had to make the shift from lumber and fishing into other projects. So we took that into consideration, and we also saw with our own eyes the difference between the way Tofino was developed and the way Ucluelet was developed. And I've got to tell you that Ucluelet won by a city mile. So when I come here tonight to talk about a development, I bear those thoughts in mind, that I hope that the district doesn't abandon that heritage of taking care of things that aren't just right in front of us today. So with that, I share concerns about affordable housing. I mean, it's a reality that we're all aware of. But it strikes me that with affordable housing and a nice environment with amenities, that it's not a trade-off. It's not one or the other. That surely we should be able to do both. And that was what I assumed the award prior to 2006 was all about, that the district was doing that. I'm all for affordable housing, and and the affordable housing should have amenities to it. I think one of the biggest amenities in any housing is the great outdoors. And so I think around the Manao properties, the idea of having a trail that goes around the properties that protects, as we've heard before, the foreshore, protects those very, very delicate mud flats. I think having that in place would be a huge boon, a huge benefit to the affordable, to the attainable, and to the other kinds of housing. And I think that should be included in it. I was disturbed to hear that in some of the correspondence that, or maybe a comment was made that perhaps no trails be constructed in the parkland. Trails on the foreshore, my understanding, was included in the official community plan, which a lot of council people, a lot of long-standing residents put a lot of time and effort and consideration into. I don't think that we should lose that. And things like that, once you lose them, they're gone. Very hard to get those back. I also note that there were concerns expressed from the First Nations. As I understand it, some archaeological concerns, some environmental concerns, some concerns about CMTs. Please do not ignore those concerns.
I think your time is up, Don.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, please.
Todd Evelina, and I'll provide my address if staff asked for it, but rest assured I'm on the Ucluelet Accessibility Committee and Bruce has walked my property. I'd like to express my support for attainable housing in Ucluelet. If you look around in January 2025, you'll see that we're firmly in a recession, and businesses in Ucluelet are struggling. Short-term accommodations are at record low occupancy, and Ucluelet is earning a lower percentage of the total tourism wallet spent in this region. This year, in comparison to the last decade, steadfast businesses that are usually open are now closed for a longer proportion of off-peak seasons. Over recent years, long-term housing starts have sputtered and bloated, either failing to complete or completing with exceptional cost overruns and missing fixtures, landscaping, and amenities. A voice of support from my child. We need to prioritize secure housing for our district's essential workers, service industry workers, nonprofit directors and employees, small business owners, seniors aging in place, and young families. As they say, the best time to invest in affordable housing was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. The anti-developer sentiment cast during our district's November 12th council meeting discussing a lot 543 would dissuade many from attempting to build here. But ARIF has a bold vision for 221 Monado. I believe that we should heed district staff advice to complete a full legal review of this development to ensure environmental assessments have been properly represented, and I appreciate Joshua's going through that tonight. As well, ensuring that there are mechanisms to move forward if ARIF fails to deliver upon their commitments. And I'll highlight the tourist commercial block in Limbo, a block from here that sits stalled, and I don't think that projects should go forward without accountability mechanisms to ensure that they complete. Or at least give the land back to the district if they don't. If we were to project council's previous objections to similarly sized developments, I would expect the mayor and councillors to scrutinize the figures for attainable housing against CMHC financial data and the CBT's living wage report. I'd expect council to highlight this project's lack of enthusiastic consent from the Ucluelet Nation, and also to debate the project's potential to add congestion to an arterial roadway, arguably much more dramatically than Helen Road would have been affected by the recent high-focus development. I'll note that the adjacent development at 2102 Peninsula was not subject to the same on-camera pressure testing against these same criteria. This is important because I believe that council should be using consistent, validated processes to assess housing based on merit. I believe that 221 Monado has the potential to be a positive, meaningful, and newsworthy project for our region, but it will require consistent oversight to ensure that the build quality, long-term durability, and attainable housing governance deliver upon ARIF's stated goals. With that said, I have 4 outstanding concerns, which I'll summarize for time. The lack of Ucluelet consent. I think that it's not too late for this. I would encourage ARIF to invest in trust building with the nation to create reciprocity and meaningful partnership. The traffic congestion that I mentioned, with this development, there's a potential with 50 to 100 automobiles across the road with the new medical clinic at 2094 and the new development at 2102 to have, somewhere between 200 and 400 vehicles a day at an intersection. And I know that's been considered, but given the brouhaha of the 4-way stop in town, that's something that I think y'all should be on top of. The sewage and water infrastructure, I appreciate that ARIF has an inclusion for a holding tank and a cartage plan if the district plans do not finish on schedule. I'd love to see all future developments have some inclusion of that infrastructure accountability. If it comes in the form of an investment or partnership in creating the development, that's great. And the final concern I have is the shipping logistics of receiving the IGF Nexus units that are coming. As it stands, these pre-built units may likely be shipped via Highway 4. Given peak season traffic and natural disasters of recent years, this approach may remain a risk to the timeline of this project. And I foresee upgrades needed to either Whiskey Dock or the Pat Leslie boat launch, or even a deep water landing to accommodate these materials arriving. I think that should be done in a meaningful way, but having just attended the regional roundtable put on for food security with Port Alberni, the addition of a serious port entryway to receive supplies and bring down our overall region carbon footprint would be additional to this project over the course of the next 6 years. But it's not documented as part of this. I imagine community members will raise the usual objections regarding density, and I will add that high density is the saw blade. Can I take my partner's time, who had to step out with a baby? The conversation of density is a saw blade that cuts through the need for housing in this community. And I would appreciate if the sensitivity around that for homeowners like myself to help other homeowners get into this market and stay and contribute would understand that developers need to increase volume to bring down costs. And I think Josh did a good description of how that's necessary. That's how buying power works. My fear is that community opposition to attainable housing in their backyards may cause projects like 221 Minato to fail by becoming housing projects, like the term is used in inner cities. I don't think that's what ARIF intends to do, but realizing that because other projects across Ucluelet have been shut down because we don't want them in our backyards, we have sequestered these homes over on Minato, which is somewhat disassociated from the downtown core. And I appreciate that ARIF has planned to build amenities in that region, but realize that as we've pushed developments further down peninsula, there is a division of the people who can afford to live on larger lots and the working class that gets pushed into a separate area. I support this project to continue, and I'll raise 2 final points. First, this project should include a mechanism to transform or hand off attainable housing to supply to a Ucluelet housing authority. ARIF is already taking on the burden of standing up an entity in their ARIF Housing Association, and Council should provision the creation of a central, impartial authority to receive and manage these housing assets long-term. Second, the core value of this project is attainable housing, and the mechanism by which we will realize that value is through ARIF's subsidiary brand IGF Nexus. I encourage the district's legal counsel to investigate whether ARIF's 3 entities are merely a sophisticated form of bankruptcy protection, but also look closely at these modular construction units and the associated pending patent. ARIF is creating homes, but they are also using this site to develop a scalable modular prototype. IGF Nexus Ucluelet is a test bed for this technology. Ancestral Ucluelet lands are the testing arena, and ARIF's desire to expand across Canada is something that should have already been on the negotiating table for the District of Ucluelet. In exchange for adjusting our zoning and official community plan, the DOU should reasonably negotiate a place for both the Ucluelet Nation and DOU on the IGF Nexus's cap table. For those who are not in innovation and investments like I am, I'd like to see this final deal include non-dilutable shares in IGF Nexus for the District of Ucluelet. We're speaking mostly to Dwayne here. There is precedent in BC where municipalities like the District of North Vancouver have helped businesses bring an innovative product to market and have negotiated a financial stake in the business. If this plan comes to fruition, ARIF will win global awards and use this project as a case study to garner new business. That's great. We can point all of the federal government resources at Ucluelet that we want. ARIF will continue to make these projects across Canada, and I think it would be great to have a prosperity stake for the DOU and the Ucluelet Nation for partnering in that creation. So I just encourage council to ask, what are we giving away when we trade off OCP amendments and bylaws for developments to use our lands as a test bed? And I thank you for your time and effort and for the graciousness to take my partner's time speaking here. I support the creation of attainable housing and believe this project is worth approving with the proper legal review, a few key adjustments, and consistent district oversight to guide positive outcomes. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Todd. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to be a lot shorter than that. My name's Natasha Barnard and I live in a trailer in the Ucluelet campground. So I've just introduced myself and I'm the daycare director for the Ucluelet and Area Childcare Society. I am writing this letter of support with 2 hats on, one as the director of a non-profit daycare society and one of them as a mature woman heading towards retirement and living in a trailer. As a director, I struggle constantly to bring qualified staff into the daycare because of the lack of housing. I have a new infant toddler centre that opened in March and is licensed for 12 children, but I only have 8 children enrolled due to the lack of staff. I currently, as of today, have 36 children on the wait list, and it grows daily. This is 36 families that may not be able to work because they cannot find childcare. This housing development could give the society the opportunity to invest in a rental property, to bring new staff into the area and open up the remaining spaces at the Little Beans daycare. On a personal level, it is absolutely paramount that this development goes forward. I've been in Ucluelet for 6 years now and have lived in a trailer due to the lack of affordable housing. It is a difficult way to live at times and becomes more and more difficult as I get older. My bed is about this high and I actually have trouble getting in it. I can honestly say to you that I don't know how much longer I can do it, which may mean I look for alternative places to live if Serenity Landing does not come to fruition. This would be devastating for me and for the community as a whole. Serenity Landing will bring crucial housing to our community. There are many people in the same position that I am, living in expensive rental housing or leaving the area if they cannot find anywhere to live. I believe if this project does not go ahead, Ucluelet is in serious trouble and is going to lose some very important people in the community and will not be able to bring new people in. And that's about it. That's my conclusion. But I do fully support. And I thank Joshua for a really in-depth presentation. I really enjoyed that. And I'm even more excited now. So, yeah, it's got my support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Natasha. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, evening, I guess. My name is Dennis Morgan. I live at 1208 Helen Road. And I'm a local business owner, and I have seasonally between 8 and 15, 16 employees. And that's the main reason why I support this project, because, and I understand I'm a biologist, I've done watershed assessments, I've done all sorts of things that would lead me to say that there might be some twiddling to do on the project, but right now I'm a business owner, and I've had the lack of housing affect me directly in terms of getting employees at times. We're good now, that's great, but it's not really about me feeling concerned about that. It's the concern, it's this base level of fear and apprehension that my team has. They're constantly worried they're going to get booted. And these are, really sweet kids. Like, these are mostly 20-somethings, a lot of them, but some older, but they live in fear, and it's not good for the psyche to live in fear. So that's really, that's why I'm speaking, but my support for the project is also because this is pretty big stuff, pretty groundbreaking, a lot of cool tech, and it is scalable, so it can go other places. I think it would be a real feather in Ucluelet's cap to have this here. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Dennis. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Did you put your hand up? Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. Oops.
You might have to move that mic up, yeah.
Is that better? I'm Joe Corzoli. Our family owns a property right next door, 230 Monado. Lived in Ucluelet for forever. I'm in favor of this project. What I've seen tonight was amazing. I've never seen it. I've been here. Well, I bought my first house 45 years ago, and I've been coming to council meetings here and there. I've never seen a developer come in and tell us things that they would never tell us about what they're going to make on properties and all that kind of stuff, and how they're going to build it. It seems like it follows our OCP. We're only going to get the apartments built when if they're needed. Everything sort of falls into place. I just don't understand. It's a really good thing. And yeah, that's all I have to say. We're all for it.
Thanks for your comments, Joe. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, go ahead.
Something wrong with a laptop? Sorry, I'm a father. I don't have time to have a printer and print it out. Okay, good evening, members of the council and fellow residents of Ucluelet. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a realtor in town, but tonight I'm here as a father.
Could you just give us your name and address, please?
Oh, sorry, yeah. It's Brian Putney, 823 Lorne White. So sorry. I'm a realtor in town, but tonight I'm here as a father. I can speak for hours on the benefits of this project with my realtor hat on, but tonight I'm just a father, a husband, and a local homeowner. As we all know, Ucluelet is a remarkable place to live, surrounded by natural beauty and a strong sense of community. It's no wonder why so many people want to call this town home. However, we've experienced or witnessed Ucluelet faces a pressing challenge. The availability of affordable housing is a growing issue that affects families, workers, and businesses alike. Today, I want to address the proposed development and highlight why this project is a crucial step forward in addressing this ongoing challenge. I understand that change can be met with concern, and that's valid. But tonight, I'd like to encourage us all to look at the broader picture and the opportunities this project can bring to Ucluelet. The lack of affordable housing impacts every aspect of our community. Families are struggling to find stable homes. Essential workers, the backbone of our local economy, are finding it increasingly difficult to stay in town. This not only disrupts lives, but also impacts our local businesses, which rely on a steady workforce to serve residents and visitors alike. Without affordable housing, we risk losing the vibrant, diverse community that makes Ucluelet special. This proposed development is not just about new buildings. It's about creating opportunities for young families to establish roots, for local workers to have reliable housing, and for Ucluelet to grow in a way that respects this unique character. By providing thoughtfully designed homes and rentals, this project has the potential to make a meaningful difference in the lives of many who already live here, as well as those who dream of calling this place home. It's also important to recognize that this development aligns with the long-term vision of Ucluelet. Growth is inevitable, but it can be guided thoughtfully to meet the needs of our community while preserving the charm and natural beauty we hold dear. The developers, sorry Josh, I know you hate that word, have proposed a project that considers these factors, and I believe it's a responsible step forward. I understand there are many concerns about how this development will affect our town. Questions about infrastructure, traffic, environmental impact, these all deserve attention and thoughtful planning. However, I believe these challenges have been addressed collaboratively and ensure the benefits of this project far outweigh any potential drawbacks. Let's work together to ensure this development is done right, in a way that serves both current and future generations of Ucluelet residents. I'm raising my kids here and would love to see them grow up and want to raise their families here one day because we made the right decisions today. In closing, I urge you to see this project not as a threat to our town, but as an opportunity to strengthen it. We have an obligation to address the housing crisis that's affecting our neighbors, our workers, and our community as a whole. Approving this development is a step in the right direction, a step for a more inclusive, sustainable, and vibrant Ucluelet. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Brian. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Laura? I'll go with Laura, but thanks for raising your hand.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Griffith Cochran. I'm at 1357 Pine Road, and I'm also the executive director of the Ucluelet Aquarium Society. And so I have a couple of different things that I'd like to touch on, but first, maybe I just want to second every single thing that Todd said. That was very well done. And also what Barbara Schramm brought up as well about the mudflats. With my Ucluelet Aquarium Society hat on, as the Ucluelet Aquarium, we mapped all of the eelgrass beds of the Ucluelet Harbor in 2022, and we'll be redoing that in 2027. And that area, that mudflat, has a lot of really healthy eelgrass. And for those that don't know, eelgrass is an essential habitat and endangered ecosystem. It's important for salmon and lingcod and rockfish and everything that we love to catch. And its presence is also important for reducing bacterial and viral loads in the Ucluelet Harbor. So that's an ecosystem that we really want to make sure succeeds. And so I'm also in favor of putting a trail or a space through that would help to designate that that there is a line that we shouldn't cross going into that mud flat. The other thing I think of as a tourism organization is that for so many of us, we moved out here because there's something about this place that we find so beautiful, and it's a connection to nature. I think that as we grow as a community, we need to ensure that all of us who live here still have an opportunity to build that connection to nature. That is what allows me to be successful in my job. I can go out, I can reconnect, and then I can talk to 700 tourists on a Saturday in August. That's why I can feel good about doing that. I know August is a really tough time for a lot of people that work in tourism. That's the time that we always burn out. We complain about traffic. We start to get frustrated about poor behavior on the trails. And so having those trail areas built so that we can spread out amongst the community and reconnect with nature around us, I think is incredibly important. I think it highlights the success in continued tourism industry, not just for visitors, but also for those of us that work in it. One thing I'd like to highlight is I've got to meet with Jody, and I've seen Josh's presentations, and they look great. But just in case they ever leave and the next people on this project are not so enthusiastic about some of these things, what protections do we have as a district to make sure that some of that tree cover is ensured, to make sure that those designated areas are respected, to make sure that the goals that are outlined in this current project are going to be met? And if they aren't, what kind of actions do we have to follow up on? And that's something that I haven't really heard much about yet, so that's an important thing for me. But I'm also enthusiastic about this project for the idea of housing and for affordable housing. I have a great team, and a lot of them are thinking about having kids or buying homes. Some of them would like to be able to buy a home without having to find a partner first. And that's puts a lot of pressure on a relationship. So, so I'm really excited about this project for those things. And I would like to make sure that we think about the really important aspects of why we live here and make sure that those continue to succeed as we move forward.
Great. Thanks for your comments, Laura. So, Cindy, you had your arm up? Yes, go ahead.
I'm Cindy Levine, 1203 Peninsula Road. I don't have a prepared speech, but I just thought I'd share some background on why I'm standing up today. I am a board member at the Tofino Housing Corporation. I've been there for over 9 years. Prior to the Housing Corporation, it was an advisory committee, and I was involved in a housing needs assessment in Tofino. And at that time in 2012, there was over 225 units identified as needed in the community. So we set our strategic plan to have 150 rental units and 30 price-restricted home ownership units, and that was, let me think, that's probably from 2019. We're successfully now owner and operator of 100 plus rental units, and we've put the price-restricted ownership on hold because even with gifted land of $1 from the District of Tofino, we were unable to make the numbers work. So the math was not mathing. So I just want to just let you guys know that the Housing Authority idea, the corporation we came from, Whistler, so we took the model from Whistler. An advisory committee has no teeth and has no money. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that there is financial reasons to have somebody take the risk. Gifted land is great, still can't build housing in Tofino for a price point that we feel comfortable with. And so that's the home ownership piece that we're all talking about, as well as the rental. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Cindy. You're a good resource. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, please go ahead.
My name is Cameron Beatty. I rent at 219 Marine Drive. I don't have anything prepared, so I'll keep this brief. I just want to speak to the threat of a lost generation in town. I'm a father. I have a young family. I own a business in Tofino. My wife and I talk every week if we can stay here. Homeownership is very out of reach for us. We'd love to stay. I know many peers of mine who would love to stay, invest in the community, buy homes, open businesses. There's nowhere for us to do that. So in 10 years from now, if we keep saying no to things like this, who lives here? That's all I have to say.
Thanks for your comments, Cameron. Yes, in the back.
I also have nothing prepared, but I think this is a great development for the community. Obviously, affordable housing is very much required. We do have, as someone was just saying, a whole generation of people that we're going to lose.
Can we just have your name and address, please?
Chantal, 1657 Bay Street. The new people coming in and youth definitely have a lot to give in a community and energy. Having said that, I am curious about I know it was said in the presentation, so I just had a couple of questions with the CMHC setting the pricing for affordable and attainable housing. My concern is that this affordable housing stays affordable in perpetuity. So I'm just wondering about I like a lot of what the developer had said, and I just am wondering about the legal obligations that the district is able to put on, or that anyone can put on, to keep this affordable in perpetuity. I'm not sure if the CMHC, I know that there's a rental apartment building that will just be bringing in, I guess, that income for however long. Is there a set time where they no longer have to keep it to that price point? Does that end after so many years with CMHC? Or is this something that's going to be maintained? 20 years? And then at 20 years, pardon me?
Sorry, I'm not allowed to answer.
No.
Okay, 20 years.
I was just going to say, I'm sure the proponent will make himself available after the meeting if you want to ask him directly.
Okay, well, so I would hope that the district would have something that can put that size of a development into some sort of affordability range in perpetuity, because in 20 years we're going to have the same problem, and it's probably going to be worse if that isn't in place.
And just what's your last name, Chantal?
That's Chantal Gemmel.
Thank you. All right, Judy?
Judy Gray, 2349 Tofino Ucluelet Highway. Moved to Ucluelet in 1998. My ex-husband moved to Ucluelet 8 months before that because we could not find a place to live. It was that difficult back then. It's no easier now. I moved here with my two children, then 3 and 5 years old, and we moved into Calm Harbor Apartments. We moved into a 2-bedroom because that's all we could get. And then we moved into a 3-bedroom in that building before we were able to find a house about a year later to rent out on the highway. It's never been easy in Ucluelet, or Tofino for that matter. My kids both live here. I inherited 2 kids in my second marriage, and one of them lives here. 2 out of the 3 of them are homeowners in the community. They got in before the COVID boon and crisis, which happened across the country. We weren't singled out for special treatment. So I just want to say that I did do a written submission, and I wholly support this project. There's been very little development in Ucluelet since 2010, or go back to 2006, as Dawn was talking about, when we won several awards for planning in this community. Things have changed drastically. There hasn't been a lot of development. A matter of fact, there's been less than 50 multifamily units in Ucluelet since 2010. The last building that was built was the Moorridge. Then there was the little birdhouses over here on Marine Drive. The place across the street would have been done if the concrete hadn't have failed, and the whole thing has to be taken down, and it's tied up in insurance. I'm going to make a comment that's probably not going to be very well received, and it's about the trail and Olsen Bay. I am a founding member of the Wild Pacific Trail Society back when it first was created. In fact, it was my idea to put the trail around the lighthouse because we couldn't get on the Weyerhaeuser lands. That was 100% my idea. Anyway, we built that trail around there. We got $60,000 from a developer got from the provincial government. And whenever I walk the trail, which I'm passionate about, you'll note that everywhere along the trail, there's people going down to the water. They're plowing trails through the bushes to go down to the water. Olsen Bay is so environmentally sensitive. There's a 30, whatever the size of the park land is around there now, should be left undisturbed. It should not have a trail through it. People will go from the trail onto the mudflat. Right now, it's so dense, they can't do that. I live on a mudflat. You don't see people walking along it. Have you ever tried walking on a mudflat? It's not easy. It's slippery as hell. And it's not a lot of fun. The water, thinking about kayaks out there, the water access from Manado Bay to where you could get a kayak in the water, you'd be flat in your face half a dozen times before you even got there. It just doesn't make sense. I fully support the Wild Pacific Trail, not on Olsen Bay. I think that a trail from Manado Bay across to the bike path, across to Ancient Cedars, and maybe up Forbes Road, because there's a new part going in around that subdivision, that they could get on there much easier and leave Olsen Bay alone. Leave it protected. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Judy. We have someone in the back. Go ahead.
I'm Daryl Dorian. I'm on 200 Hemlock Street. I just wanted to say that, like, I've lived in 4 provinces. I've skateboarded thousands and thousands of kilometers of trails, and like a trail down there won't protect it. If you have a fence at a 30-meter barrier, that will protect it. I've boated into that Olsen Bay, and out of guilt, I've made flocks of birds fly away, and I was awestruck how beautiful it was. And like, you can't walk it down in the mud flats, like Judy said. You just can't walk in mud flats. That's what they are. I've lost a pair of shoes when I was a kid in mud flats before. So, and that says, like, I've explored a lot of different types of areas and countless waterfronts in many communities across this country. And a fence is the only way. If you have a trail on the other side of the fence, maybe, but protecting those mud flats is really important to me, because I've been down there in a boat and I've scared the birds away, and I didn't enjoy it, but it was beautiful. It's like, so I think that's really important, and I really support the entire project at large.
Great, thanks for your comments, Daryl. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? All right, are there any members of the public attending by Zoom that wish to speak? Click the raise hand icon.
We have a raised hand. Barb Beasley, I will promote you. Please unmute and you should be able to speak.
Hi, thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Just your name and address, please.
Thank you, sorry. It's Barb Beasley. I live actually at 65 Sutton Road, and I own property at 1922 and 1926 Bay Street in Ucluelet. I'm a local conservation biologist, ecologist. I have a huge appreciation for our natural environment and the benefits they provide, which have been mentioned by several other folks who've spoken. I love our community. I like the fact that Ucluelet is an amazing place, and it's largely because we have a lot of amazing people here. And I do very much feel for people who don't have adequate housing. So it makes it really difficult to speak against this proposal. And in fact, I don't want to speak against it in total. I just want to I just want to outline a few issues, and in particular, the environmental, the lack of a proper environmental impact assessment from my perspective. So I have a PhD in biology, and I founded a society here called the the Association of Wetland Stewards for Clayoquot and Barkley Sound. And I've been working with the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust in the last year to think about how we identify wetland habitats in a place that gets 3 meters of rain a year. And it's come to our attention that many of the people who work as qualified professionals are not actually adequately trained to identify wetland habitats in this place. And I know from some discussions that one of the developments that started to happen in Ucluelet was stalled because of that. So I do want to warn that doing a desktop exercise to see if a wetland is on a property is not adequate, that there really should have been somebody come to the site to check out where people are suggesting there's wetland habitat, to ensure that those people are doing an adequate job of that assessment, and that especially if this project requires speed in progressing forward to make it affordable, that's something that I think needs to be considered. It's essential that that gets checked into so that there's no risk of any stalling. I've looked briefly at the pages and pages of environmental impact assessment and other assessments that were done. I don't think that the buffer of 30 meters is adequate, not in the short term, in that it doesn't actually have trees all throughout it. Those need to be planted. And then certainly not in the long term, where we expect sea level rise of 1 meter. It's a low-lying property. We're going to see water inundate much of that 30-meter buffer over the next 50 or 70 years. So in the long term, I think that there needs to be greater consideration about what kind of a buffer is required for the integrity of the ecosystem, as well as the structural integrity of the buildings. There is a suggestion that there'll be retaining walls and fencing that will protect the mudflats and the fish-bearing stream and associated wildlife from disturbance. There seems to be, the Pacific Wildlife Trail Society suggests that a trail could work, but I also hear the arguments against that, and I agree that it's very challenging. So there needs to be, again, more thought into how that could be effective. But one way would be to actually increase the buffer, and if a trail is going to be established with a fence and something that prevents people from accessing the mudflats, it should be further back than right on the edge of the mudflat. I'm concerned a little bit about what you do with hardening structures. So if you're building walls and fences, you're changing the ecosystem. You're potentially changing how the tidal flats will change over time with deposition of sand and mud. Hardening structures are known to affect the way in which hydrology changes these kinds of mudflats. And I didn't see any of that in the environmental impact assessment at all. No reference. I also didn't see any reference to any research, any literature, anything like that. I felt that the environmental impact assessment report was quite inadequate. So then the last point I'm just going to make, if I have time, is the fact that there was also a tsunami hazard report. Don't know if it's called exactly that, I can't remember, but it's basically, it suggests that 28 of the new structures are going to be within the 0 to 2 meter tsunami hazard scenario zone. And that's a scenario based on the modeling that's been done by the district in the past, which is what had set a restriction in the OCP for where you could build. So 28 new structures within 0 to 2 meters within that scenario zone, and 68 in the 2 to 4 meter zone. And for me, I know that there are lots of houses, lots of people, lots of commercial buildings in that kind of zone, but I'm not sure I can condone putting more there. And one of the main reasons for that is the mitigation isn't there. So if one mitigation is to improve the tsunami warning system, but that doesn't deal with the risk. There's a great warning system in place, but it remains to be seen whether we're going to have adequate shelter and food and medical assistance for people who would have no choice but to evacuate from homes that are within that 0 to 4 meter tsunami hazard zone, scenario zone. So I'm not sure why we're allowing that to happen. That is concern for me, especially because one of my partner is a member of the social services network that will be trying to help people in that situation. And I don't feel that there's adequate support for that. And maybe perhaps there's a way to improve that through some of the kinds of amenities that are being offered here. But it's a risk that I think is worth having council consider quite seriously as a part of this proposal.
Okay, great. Thanks for your comments, Barb. I think you're out of time.
Okay,
but thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public attending by Zoom that wish to speak?
If anyone else on Zoom wishes to speak, please raise your hand. There are no hands raised at this time.
And are there any speakers calling in? Press star 9 if you wish to speak.
There are no speakers calling in.
Okay. So this is now the second call for speakers. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to the bylaws? Yes, please.
Good evening. I'm Murray Cole. I live at the Ucluelet RV campground. And I was born in Tofino 75 years ago. I left here 40 years ago. Came back 2 years ago, and I find it really terrible to see what's going on with housing here. It's disgusting. And these people that are against, and the things that they're against, then we shouldn't build any more houses here at all. And I just find it really tough. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for your comments, Murray. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, Chris.
Chris Bosman, 847 Lauren Waite Place.
Can you speak right into the mic, please?
847 Lauren Waite Place. First and foremost, I support the project. I have an invested interest in the project, so take that for what you wish. I mostly just wanted to speak about a few points that I've heard tonight. One, around the biologist report. I personally walked the site with the biologist for about 9.5 hours on a particularly wet and nasty September day. When Josh tells you we walked every inch of that site, I'm telling you we walked every inch of that site, and I can show you the pictures of us like hanging in the West Coast jungle, trying to map little creeks and laying flags for surveyors to come back and pick up, and identifying every piece of bark and twig and doing all the research as to what the different plants and animal species and amphibians were. So that's happened. It's not just somebody looked on a computer and went, oh yeah, this is fine. And that's happened multiple times by multiple independent environmental review agencies. So I hope that clears a little bit of that up. And then as far as the need for housing, we own a business in town. We got to figure something out here. We're watching good people leave. We're watching people with good jobs just being like, I can't do this anymore. And, you know, sorry, I forget your name, but I agree 100%. Like, we're going to lose a generation here. And if that happens, you're going to lose a town. So I think we need to get this and a few other things going to allow some economic activity, some housing activity, and some actual sustainability built into our town that is beyond a boom or bust tourism industry that we all have seen the rise of. I think many of us have profited from, but then we've also seen that industry collapse at times and go through some really hard times. So housing's in part of that, economic development's the other part of that. So there you go.
Thanks for your comments, Chris. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Yes, please.
I am Kevin Van Verhoef, 1961 Cinnamoka. I wasn't going to speak today because I don't really do a lot of public speaking, but realizing I'm probably the youngest one in this room, so for a voice of the younger generation, what Dennis spoke of earlier today, it's very true. You know, a lot of us constantly think we need a backup plan because we're going to get kicked out in 6 months. Somebody's going to sell the house. And it's been very difficult for all of us in that generation. So to see this project and the way Josh presented it today really kind of turned my head and the opinion that I thought I had going into this meeting. I do strongly agree with the environmental needs around it, but I trust that the actions are going to be taken, including 30-meter buffer from the road, knowing that there's power lines there that already take up 10 meters of that, and the wetlands as well, but really focusing on the availability for housing for the younger generation. I moved here 3.5 years ago, and not knowing what kind of community I'm coming into, really fell in love with this community and would love to stay around until I grow old. So we got to do something now. So let's just do it. Get it done. Make something. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Kevin. Any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Josh.
Your Worship, Mayor, and members of Council, Josh Jenkins, 1376 Victoria Road. I'm here today on behalf of the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce's Economic Development Committee to address a pressing issue. Our town's ongoing workforce shortages and the critical need for affordable and attainable housing. To address this challenge, this issue is at the top of the list of threats that has been determined by our committee. So businesses and organizations across our region have faced significant financial blows over the past few years. Impacts of the pandemic, highway closures, other road work, rising operational costs, and ongoing economic uncertainty. Despite these hurdles, they remain committed to serving our community and thousands of visitors who are vital to the local economy. However, without immediate action to increase stable housing options for workers, our businesses are facing existential threats. The lack of affordable housing has made it increasingly difficult to retain and attract the workforce we so desperately need. Many businesses are operating with skeleton crews, limiting their hours, even reducing services due to staffing shortages. This issue is not unique to any one sector. It affects tourism, hospitality, healthcare, retail, and every other industry in our town. Without sufficient housing, businesses cannot sustain operations, let alone plan for growth or long-term success. We want to emphasize that we do not advocate for unchecked development and growth. However, the pressing housing shortages must be addressed swiftly. With construction costs steadily increasing, the opportunity to provide genuinely affordable and attainable housing is rapidly diminishing. If action is not taken soon, we risk pricing out those who are in urgent need, and we ask for your continued commitment to make housing a top priority for the immediate future. And so let's ensure that Ucluelet remains a thriving, sustainable, and vibrant community for generations to come. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks for your comments, Josh. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? I'll start with you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Erica Keene, and I'm at 1766 Cypress Road. I've lived on and off the coast for about a decade. I grew up in Campbell River, and I've worked in various sectors here in nonprofit for the District of Ucluelet doing youth programming, and now as a registered nurse working with Indigenous communities in the area. And we're in a recruitment crisis, we're in a housing crisis, and we just lost an excellent nurse because they're scared that they can't have stable housing here. And that affects everyone. What I'm wondering with this development and the question that you asked, Councillor Sean Anderson, is what are the legal obligations if the developer can't guarantee the end user price? Is the increase going to go onto those luxury homes, half of which he has mentioned go to him and his staff? Or will it go onto the attainable/affordable housing units? And what is going to make sure that that price difference doesn't affect what we're really trying to do, which is to create affordable housing? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Erica. Chantel?
Sorry, Chantal. Gemmel, 1657 Bay Street. Just want to reiterate, I only am okay with this development if this is an affordable housing thing that carries on in perpetuity. And it's after, I don't know if CMHC has actually approved that this was going to take place, but in the housing agreement bylaw here, I just noticed termination. Both parties agree the rental rate restrictions and eligibility requirements imposed by this agreement shall terminate on January 1st, 2036. So that's definitely a lot less than 20 years that was stated out here. So why do we have that in place that this terminates at 2036 when I feel like to protect the community and the affordability of these units, this is something that we should have legally protected in the long term, especially if we're talking about giving up environmental issues, where we know that there's going to be tons of issues with the road coming out onto the highway that will probably at some point be at the cost of the taxpayers to fix at some point in time. So if we're giving that up, what are we giving that up for? And I don't know why 2036 would be in there.
Okay, thank you for your question. Any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? Dario?
Dario Corlazzoli, 1165 Rupert Road. Kind of back up a few years, I was on council back in the day where we won the awards for sustainability and planning. And my whole purpose for being on council, for running on council, was specifically to try to ensure that families and young people could actually live and thrive in Ucluelet. It was very challenging at that time, and we were just dealing with our internal challenges. Since then, as everyone knows, that the rest of the world has come upon us and made those challenges even more difficult. So a lot of these challenges are not created by Ucluelet. They're created from the outside. These prices of housing, the real estate markets. So it's a very challenging time. I support this project because from what I can see, it's the first group that has actually presented a project that will at least have a chance of providing affordable housing and sustainable. It's a nonprofit group, which is, I mean, the first that I've ever heard that have come to us. There is challenges, and that's going to be for the council today to work on. But I think that it's worth the opportunity to move it to the next stage and see where it will bring. Like it's the only time that we're going to be able to see affordable housing. It's not cheap to build in Ucluelet. It's not cheap to buy property, and it's not going to get any cheaper. As far as the trail, I've always been in favor of the Pacific Trail, but as Judy mentioned, I think it's just channels people to get onto the mudflats. Right now there is a buffer there that it makes it very difficult to get. And the other thing is if we put those costs onto the developer, those costs go directly on to the affordability of the units. So the more pressure you put on the developer to do these things, the farther out of reach those properties get. So it's a balancing act, and I think that this group is reputable, and I think it's something that we should move forward with. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Dario. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address the bylaws? There will be one more call for this if somebody just has cold feet. Are there any members of the public attending by Zoom that wish to speak? Click the raise hand icon.
We have a raised hand. Nancy L., I will promote you, and you should be able to unmute.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it's Nancy Lobot, 790 Rainforest Drive. Excuse my voice, I'm getting over a pretty bad cold. On December 7th, 2023, council meeting staff report on page 68, sorry, I'm a nerd, indicated that once the parkland is transferred to public ownership, the district could pursue trail construction, habitat enhancement, or other park operations at its discretion. All subject, comma, of course, comma, to council priorities and budget considerations. So I know that there's a lot of concern about the buffer zone that is now owned by the district and its relationship to this, excuse me, to this development. But I think that we should probably focus on what's going to happen in the lands that are really being subject to the OCP changes and to the bylaw changes, not to the parkland that the district already owns. And it may well be the case that it's going to be challenging to put a trail there for reasons in addition to what has already been brought up, in that there are identified culturally significant trees in the parkland. The YFN report points to the possibility of a midden in that land. So I think that should be a whole separate discussion of council as to whether there should or should not be a trail through there. The idea of fencing is a good one to sort of minimize the tendency for people to want to bushwhack back in there. The developer of my property has built 6 foot tall separated fencing so that the wildlife can still get through the green space behind my house and the trailer park, so that there's no really restriction to wildlife movement. Maybe something like that could be implemented at the back end of these properties. But I do think that the project itself is going to be very beneficial, especially given that most of the land has already been cleared and that there is no evidence in the Aquaparian report of any wetland issues. And they do suggest that when the land is raised, that Aquaparian be there in addition to a geotechnical engineer, or I forget the exact word, something like that. So I think that there are enough caveats in all of the reports that I've read that will ensure that the environmental concerns are taken into account during the building phases of this project. With respect to the Peninsula Road back offsets, I have a copy of I think it might have been a late item for the on the 10th council meeting which maybe Josh can address since he will have a chance again, maybe. It's on page 3 of his response to council's queries, where he indicates that he's not planning to remove the quote 30-meter treed buffer, but rather to reduce it to 10 meters from the boundary line, which is approximately a 20-meter setback from Peninsula Road, which will still give presumably a relatively treed entrance into town along that stretch of the property. So, those are just some additional pieces of information that you might find interesting. I really like the project, and the fact that it is going to be phased in also makes some sense. So there won't be any additional clear cutting until as needed. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your comments, Nancy. Are there any other members of the public attending by Zoom that wish to speak?
If there are any other members on Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. There are none at this time.
Thank you. Are there any speakers calling in?
There are no speakers calling in at this time.
And have we received any unpublished correspondence about the bylaws to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Yes, we have. There are 5 corresponding items, which through the mayor, I will read now. The first one came through Josh Deneni. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Joshua Deneni, and I am here to express my concern over the Minato Road development. I feel strongly that we must build affordable housing here in Ucluelet, but I think it is imperative we don't rush our decisions as a collective mind. Sorry, there's a typo. I've seen the new developers' plans. They seem like community-oriented people who really want to make a change here in Ucluelet, and I think that is amazing. Unfortunately, we have been burned by similar situations in the past, and I feel as if we don't have the proper local legislation in place to protect ourselves preemptively. I believe the 30-meter tree buffer must be maintained to keep the feel of our town. This is the rugged West Coast after all. The developers are proposing a 10-meter buffer where the power lines meet the road along Peninsula, but that 10 meters has already been mostly cleared. My other concerns are the trees themselves. There is some old growth within that area, and it seems they will spare no tree along Peninsula. Another question I'm left with is the affordability of the housing itself. There is conflicting information on 3 different pages about how much of the development is going to be attainable and how much will be affordable housing. One source states 60% of the housing will be affordable housing with priority given to locals. Other sources state only 30% will be affordable housing. I'd like to see some legislation in place to legally bind developers to the promises they make to our town before we let anyone build something to this scale, especially so for out-of-town developers who only see Ucluelet as a money pit. These types of people have never done a beach cleanup in their life. I really want to see a change here in Ucluelet. We can all cohabitate happily while maintaining the natural beauty of our amazing town, but I think it is important we don't risk being taken advantage of by smooth-talking businessmen who have no sentimental ties to this area, because I, for one, am tied here for life. On to message number 2, or correspondence number 2. is from Marcus Ranala, 669 Rainforest Drive. Good day. The last time that I gave input to a development proposal was when I got up to speak in person at the meeting regarding the proposed zoning change for the lot at the corner of Marine Drive and Rainforest Lane. On this occasion, I witnessed a huge turnout from the community unanimously present to voice a wide range of concerns about the project. My single largest personal issue was the lack of contractual legal accountability to ensure that the developer would actually follow through on getting a medical clinic in place. Council decided to completely disregard every single concern and approve the plan 100% as submitted. It is common knowledge that after Nick Killings received the approved zoning change, he then went on to try and squeeze VIHA for exorbitant rent, believing himself to be the only bidder on the contract. This entire episode was an extremely negative experience for myself and many other Euclusians who took the time to try and engage with council. Ultimately, we were left questioning the integrity of the decision makers involved and with a strong conviction that none of our opinions were ever given consideration. Mako had already made up his mind prior to the meeting, and everyone else was irrelevant. Anyone knows where this got us. As it stands, I'm largely in favor of the new Monado development proposal, just as I would have been with the one on Rainforest should at least some of the public's concerns actually been addressed. I write now to implore this new council to not make the same mistakes again. Many people will be raising serious concerns this evening about the massively increased density, removal of forested setbacks, the general appearance of a Soviet military installation, and enforcement of developer accountability. Listen to them, make meaningful changes, give us a reason to actually believe in the process again. And we have another correspondence from Tamara Summers. Hello, I am writing to express my support for the proposed community housing development at 221 Monado. I will soon be employed by then. We'll be looking to employ folks for a new Ucluelet-based company. I am aware of the significant challenges that both employers and employees face in securing housing in the area, and the shortage of affordable and accessible accommodation is a barrier not only to onboarding and retaining staff, but also to fostering a vibrant, thriving community. Developments like the one proposed for Monado are essential to addressing this critical need. By creating more permanent housing options, Ucluelet can better support its workforce, attract new talent, and ensure that businesses and residents alike can flourish. This project represents an important step towards building a sustainable future for the community. I hope it receives the support and approval it needs to move forward. Two more. The next one is from Samuel Vandervalk. Hi, I just wanted to send an email saying I would love for the housing project to go through. It would be great to get some additional housing, as right now it is hard for many people to find housing. I have someone on my property that has been looking to find a place for the past 3 months. Thanks. And lastly, okay. It's a little bit of a lengthy one. This is from Mark Fortune, 210 Monado Road. Dear Council, I have lived and raised my family in Ucluelet at our home at 210 Monado Road since 1998. I feel that I am more than qualified to raise some concerns in regards to this development as follows. Carrying capacity of the property. I would put the carrying capacity of the property at 20 to 30 homes. The proposal as written will at build out encompass a quarter of Ucluelet's population. This seems excessive and driven profit, not necessarily good, sound community planning. Septic upgrades. I currently push my effluent up to the lift station at Peninsula Road. I did not see any septic upgrades proposed for this project. Under the user pay program, it is up to the developer to supply the septic upgrades required for his or her development. I did not see a single reference to this. I am totally against utilizing taxpayers' money to fund a developer's project shortfall. This needs to be addressed before the project moves forward. Environmental. 221 Monado is a jewel in Ucluelet and should be developed accordingly. Nowhere else in the district can you access the fragile coastal salt marsh that has property surround. The surrounding forest and foreshore are very delicate, and any abuse will scare the area for years to come. I note that there is a park dedication for the Wild Pacific Trail, but there is no mention of the Coastal Trail Network. This should be part of the developer's amenities to the District of Ucluelet. The trail has a twofold purpose. It allows access to this pristine area while forming a protective barrier so that the delicate tidal marsh grass does not get damaged. I see that Arab have kayak storage areas, but no designated launch area. This is problematic. It would be short-sighted and irresponsible for council to omit this public amenity. Building setback reductions on park dedication should not be allowed. The root networks for the trees and vegetation require the entire park dedication. Reducing the setback compromises the wilderness corridor that you are trying to protect in the first place. A reduction in lot density will assist. Roads. Access on and off Monado can be very challenging. I'm very concerned with the road design, or should I say the lack of design. The Arab proposal only shows the current portion of the Monado road allowance and nothing on 221 lot side. The new road design should be fully developed. A single access point to Peninsula is a non-starter, especially with the proposed traffic flows. We need to show detailed designs and trigger points for their implementation. Right now, we just have recommendations that require fleshing out. Internal street dimensions should meet a municipal standard. I see a problem with supplying one parking stall per unit. I would estimate that 60 to 80% of the accommodations would have more than one car. Where do the excess cars go? On the street on Monado? Where does somebody park a boat? I see emergency vehicle access to lot 5 problematic for access. Reducing the density would go a long way in providing proper parking amenities. Emergency evacuation from the lowland during a tsunami warning. There is insufficient road development to evacuate this area in a timely manner with full build out. I have had to evacuate our property numerous times in the past. I see this new development proposing a risk to my family's safety and security without a proper road plan in place. How are we to access a safe zone in a traffic jam? The project really needs a proper road and flow plan developed prior to moves forward. Developer pressure. The last public meeting I attended, I was surprised at the amount of pressure the developer was putting on council for approvals to move the project forward hastily. It seems that the tail is wagging the dog. It is up to the developer to present a complete picture of the project. It is good to remind yourself of this quaint saying. Poor planning of lack of resources on your part do not make an emergency on my part. The current assessed value of the property is $3.4 million. The project should be scaled to cost. It is not the responsibility of council to award a land developer excess profits. We should be building within our means. The barrack buildings that are proposed may be affordable housing. There appear to be numerous clauses to be flexible. Being flexible is not a commitment. The developer should commit to the minimum. It is council's responsibility to set this minimum expectation for the electorate. Thank you, Mark Fortune.
That concludes the late items. Okay.
That seems to be all at this time.
All right, we'll move on to our third and final call for speakers. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to the bylaws? I'll start with Shane.
My name is Shane Hilder, 2108 Peninsula Road.
Just speak right into the mic, please.
My apologies. Yeah, I just want to say, overall, I was really impressed by Joshua's presentation. I do support the project, and I think it's really good for the community. We certainly need affordable housing. It's a need. It's been a need for a long time. As a direct neighbor to the project, I do have a few concerns regarding density. I'm kind of advocating for a slight decrease, perhaps to 210 units from 250. But I understand perhaps the math doesn't math for a development of that scale when you're trying to provide affordable housing. So that's been my recommendation. I have other concerns regarding entrance to the development. I'd really like to see 2 access points. There's a great access to the top of the hill that you guys potentially might use as emergency use, but I'd really like to see it as a dedicated access point, because I believe there's future plans in the OCP to have a road link up with Ocean West developments. So I'd really like to see that and kind of finalize those traffic assessments before finalize the development. But yeah, overall, it's good for the community. We need affordable housing, and I'd really like to see some commitment legally binding the developer to providing X amount of housing at what cost. They seem like very trustworthy people, but my understanding is we don't have a legal binding agreement in place. So I would like to see that. But overall, I think it's good for the community, and I just had a few recommendations there about perhaps scaling back, and yeah, that was kind of my thoughts, but appreciate it.
Thanks for your comment, Shane. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to the bylaws? Yeah, I know. I'm looking for first-time speakers first before I get to second-time speakers. Anyone else in the audience looking to speak to the bylaws? Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Sorry, this is just a curiosity. I was wondering if there could be some clarity on that, what Chantel spoke about earlier. So right now it's page 35, sorry. It says termination, both parties agree the rental rate restrictions and eligibility requirements imposed by this agreement shall terminate on January 1st, 2036 for attainable units and for the term of funding for affordable units. And my understanding is that this time period was changed before Christmas and that it used to be for a longer time period. And I was just wondering what the rationale for that might have been, why it might.
So again, I'm sure the proponent will stick around after the meeting if you'd like to ask him directly.
Okay.
We don't do a back and forth discussion at a public hearing.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. It's a good question. Any other members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to the bylaws? That was the third and final call for that. Are there any other speakers on Zoom? Raise your hand.
There doesn't appear to be any hands raised at this time.
And are there any speakers calling in?
There are no call-ins at this time.
And have we received any new emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
There are no further emails at this time.
Okay, great. I now declare the public hearing for District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1366, 2024, District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1367, 2024, and District of Ucluelet Housing Agreement Bylaw number 1368, 2024 is closed at 6:55 p.m. I move that the January 21st, 2025 special council meeting be adjourned at 6:55 p.m. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, and thank you all for attending tonight. You have to go to the bathroom. Go, go.